We're talking to Dr. Al-Hadid, the chairperson of the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State University, and the topic is Malcolm X. Doctor, let's continue that conversation that I so abruptly interrupted during our first segment here. Let's continue that.
Well, our subject here is Malcolm Little. That was his name. And so when he went to Boston, that's when he sort of got involved in crime. Then, of course, he went to New York, where he really got involved in the underworld. And he became a thief. He had a burglary ring. He also was a pimp, a hustler. And so finally, in 1946, he got arrested and was sentenced to prison for 10 years. He actually served 6.5 years of his prison term. But while in prison in Massachusetts, he was visited by some members of his family, and they started telling him about the Nation of Islam. And about Elijah Muhammad and Master Farad Muhammad. And so because of the experiences he had had with crime and also his background growing up within the Marcus Garvey family, he started to listen. But now at first he wasn't too much interested in religion. So when his brother approached him, he told him that, Malcolm, I know a way that you can get out of prison. And so he just thought it was as being a hustler, he thought it was some kind of scam. So he told him to stop eating pork, stop smoking cigarettes, and stop using profanity. And he said, that's all? He said, yeah, that's all you need to do. And so he didn't know at the time that he was being preconditioned for a religious conversion. And so he stopped doing that, and people started looking at him differently. And so over time, he became a model prisoner. And also he started to study the teachings of the Nation of Islam. When he was told that the white man was the devil, which he had no problem in believing, because after all, his father had been killed by the white folks, the Klan. He had 2 uncles or 3 uncles that had been killed by the Klan. His mother had been committed to an insane asylum by white folks. And also the fact that when he was arrested, he was involved with 2 white women, and they were used as sort of go-betweens. They would go to the homes, case the homes, and then report back to him. And then he and his associates would go and break in the home when the family wasn't at home. So he put, 1 and 1 equals 2. He figured it all out. Well, these are the people that are responsible for me being in prison, so I know they got to be devils. But one thing that he never could digest was that the white man was, that the black man rather was God. He couldn't quite fathom that in his mind, but he did readily accept the fact that the white man was the devil. So when he got out of prison in 1952, then he went to Detroit with his brother. He was on parole because he only served 6.5 years out of the 10-year sentence that he was given. So once he met Elijah Muhammad started to teach him. So in a very short period of time, I'd say about 2 years, he became the minister of the temple in Harlem, Temple number 7. And shortly after that, he became the national spokesperson for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, at the time that he received these teachings of Islam, he did not know, did not realize that these teachings were not exactly what Islam was all about. And in order to show the difference, let me just tell the audience what true Islam is. Well, first of all, Islam means total submission to the will of Allah. A person who accepts this becomes a Muslim. The proper name for God is Allah, and the holy text of the Muslims is the Quran. And there are 5 basic beliefs that you must have. First of all, that there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is last and final messenger. You must also pray 5 times a day, give 2.5% of your wealth in charity, and then you should also fast during the month of Ramadan. And as fate would have it, we are now trying to sight the new moon to begin the fasting of Ramadan at this very moment. Ramadan here will start either Saturday or Sunday. Then finally, we have the pilgrimage to Mecca, which comes in the last month of the Islamic calendar, which is the month of Hajj. And that was the thing that when Malcolm made the pilgrimage to Mecca, that would allowed him to see clearly the difference between the type of Islam he was taught and Islam that he eventually came to accept as true Islam or mainstream Islam. But as things developed, Malcolm became very popular. As a matter of fact, as early as 1958, he traveled abroad to Sudan, to Egypt, to Turkey, and he had a chance to see true Islam as early as 1958. So when he came back, he had a different kind of perspective on Islam in contrast to what he had been taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So as things kept unraveling, people inside of the Nation of Islam became somewhat jealous of him. And they started taking his articles out of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And, you know, the jealousy and animosity started to develop. So eventually, they tried to figure out some way to get him out of the Nation of Islam. And the incident they used as a pretext of getting him out of the Nation of Islam was when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. Elijah Muhammad sent an executive order for none of his ministers to say anything about the incident. So Malcolm, after giving a speech, inadvertently said that the assassination of Kennedy was a case of the chickens coming home to roost. And what did he want to say that?
I remember that statement. I remember.
He made that statement, and then initially he was suspended from the Nation of Islam for 90 days. But he eventually realized that he was not going to be admitted back into the Nation of Islam. So he then went to the Islamic Center in Brooklyn, New York, and there at the Islamic Center, he became a true and proper Muslim. And once he converted in 1964, he then made arrangements to go to Mecca so that he could really see the entire Muslim world and travel throughout the Muslim world. And so the Malcolm that left the Nation of Islam in 1964, around March of 64, and the one that went to Mecca in April of 1964 was totally different from the Malcolm X that developed in terms of after his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1964.
Very good. And I tell you, I think that this might be a good point to stop for this second commercial break, after which we can come back and then you can sort of give us the information relative to the assassination and really the legacy. I think you gave us a lot of information dealing with the legacy of Marcus Garvey. And I'm sure that Malcolm has, certainly his legacy might not be as great as Marcus Garvey's legacy, but certainly he, and I'm sure that you have a lot of information in reference to that legacy. And of course, let us take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this second commercial break. The chairperson